Over 3 minutes, 31 seconds of a lifetime spent at the height of fashion condensed to a split second. All eyes on the girl with the punk nose ring who catches the eye of one of the world's greatest photographers. She becomes the face of a generation. But how does an aristocratic art student become a supermodel? And why did her light dim too soon? We investigate. Welcome to our channel. With over 400 magazine covers under her belt, this woman was a true chameleon. Yet somehow this British aristocrat never quite conformed to the mold of supermodel, even though her face graced the runways of every major designer from Miu Miu to Chanel, Yves Saint Laurent to Versace. And she walked in countless unforgettable shows. Today we take a deep dive into the life of a model who was born into privilege but made a name for herself despite it. A few know that her parents had a rather unconventional bohemian lifestyle and met while they were traveling in India. So they returned to England, where her father grew up on his family's estate in Scotland. Though her mom didn't like country life, the place stuck because it was hard to leave when you were a grandchild of the Duke of Devonshire with a title to inherit. Hence, the childhood of Britain's top model was spent riding horses, hunting foxes, playing with ponies, attending garden parties, and sailing. She was also allowed to roam free, even being left alone for days on end in her father's art studio, which sparked a lifelong passion for sculpture. Later, she studied it at Winchester School of Art. But her fate changed when a photograph of her was sent to British Vogue by her mother. At age 16, Naomi Campbell saw the pictures of her on the pages of Vogue Italia and called up her mother asking to be put in touch with the photographer. The rest is history. After that, she found herself on the set of a photo shoot with Stephen Meisel. She remembers him as someone who was so precise about everything, which was very useful for her as a very young model. He knew exactly what he wanted and how to get it out of you. Although when asked about her first time on set, she admitted to being terrified, but said that Stephen somehow calmed her down. Now, years later, she still describes him as a dear friend. He was already fascinated by her aristocratic bearing and unique look, especially her nose ring, which she got in Paris when she saw a street vendor piercing them. Punk then became a key trend in the early 90s, and Naomi was already wearing oversized suits, so the look was easy to pull off. Looking at her now, it seems almost surreal that she would need to prove her unconventional beauty, because today there isn't a soul alive who wouldn't recognize her long neck, sharp cheekbones, and aristocratic features. This season, Miu Miu has returned to supermodels, Prada has revisited the slip dress, Fendi is celebrating the baguette bag, and everyone's favorite Naomi Campbell is on the cover of British Vogue once again. Full circle. But let's return to the 90s when Naomi broke through and defined the fashion rebel look of the decade with her angular bob, cropped hair, and dark kohl-rimmed eyes. Androgynous and edgy, she was a breath of fresh air compared to the waifish models that came before her. In the new issue of British Vogue, she talks about how she challenged the standards of beauty at the time and how she was told to lose weight. But instead of fitting in, she paved the way for diversity and inclusion in the fashion world. By the time she graced the cover of the January 1990 issue of British Vogue, Naomi was already walking the runways for everyone from Versace to Chanel and Alexander McQueen. She was on her way to becoming a household name. We'll tell you more about her relationship with the greatest designers of our time in a moment. But first, let's talk about some unknown facts from her first shoot for Vogue Italia. Although Naomi was only 17 at the time, the stylist chose clothes from the spring-summer collections by Italian designers. She wore Miu Miu, Blue Marine, Fendi, and Dolce & Gabbana. And although she was nervous working with such a legendary photographer, she was also excited. Her mother drove her to the shoot and waited around until Naomi was done. Naomi was discovered at a pivotal time in fashion history when designers like Gianni Versace, Karl Lagerfeld, and John Galliano were experimenting with different styles, moving away from the minimalist trend of the 80s and embracing a more maximalist, playful, sexy, and rebellious aesthetic. Naomi thrived in this environment, embracing the bold colors, patterns, and textures that defined the 90s. She walked the runway for all the big names of the time. It was not uncommon for her to walk in multiple shows in a single day, starting at 10 a.m. and finishing at midnight. Despite the hectic schedule, she made a special effort to be on time for each show, respecting the designer's work. Backstage was a whirlwind of activity with stylists, makeup artists, and hairdressers rushing around to get the models ready for their turn on the runway. But Naomi always took the time to help anyone who needed it, whether it was holding a glass of water steady or offering a comforting word. She was always there for her fellow models, remembering fondly the camaraderie and mutual support they shared. Her relationship with the designers was also special. She was close with Versace, who often included her in his shows and ad campaigns. She considers Lagerfeld to be God, having learned so much from him and describing him as a genius and visionary. When she met him, he gave her a book on Coco Chanel, which inspired her to study the designer and embrace classic pieces like the little black dress. She also has fond memories of Alexander McQueen, whom she considered a friend. She remembers his wild imagination and incredible talent, as well as his quiet nature, which belied the drama of his shows. It was during this time that Naomi really came into her own, embracing the spotlight and using her platform to speak out against racism and inequality. She became a leading voice for diversity and inclusion in the fashion world, paving the way for many other models of color to follow in her footsteps. It was during this time that she also formed lasting friendships with other top models, including Linda Evangelista, Christy Turlington, and Cindy Crawford. They became known as the Trinity, a trio of supermodels whose individual styles and personalities defined the era. They made a huge impact on the fashion world and helped to shape the trends and styles of the time. Their influence can still be seen today. We could not talk about Naomi's iconic 90s without mentioning her defining Vogue cover, the November 1994 issue of British Vogue photographed by the legendary Patrick de Marchelier. This cover became an instant classic, capturing the essence of the 90s fashion rebel look. But it wasn't just the clothes that made it so memorable. It was also Naomi's fierce and confident expression that conveyed a sense of independence and self-assurance that resonated with women around the world. This cover cemented Naomi's status as a fashion icon and helped to define the 90s look forever. In the documentary, The First Monday in May, we learn that she turned down an estimated $9 million worth of ads because they weren't ethical or didn't fit her vision. Although she worked less than many of her peers, she was still in demand. But what makes this fact unknown is that she doesn't talk about it. However, we do know that Naomi was never keen on living the typical LA party girl lifestyle and instead preferred to keep a low profile. Although she was raised in the Scottish countryside, she loves city life and calls New York her second home. She didn't marry until she was 29, and she's very private about her kids. She married the Russian billionaire and art collector Vladislav Doronin after 6 years of dating. They have a son named Blessed and a daughter named Mama, as well as 2 adopted daughters. But she's also been romantically linked to many famous faces, including U2 frontman Bono, rapper Tupac Shakur, actor Leonardo DiCaprio, music producer Quincy Jones, and many others. Despite the immense pressure to conform to the expectations of the fashion world, she managed to carve out her own path, paving the way for future generations of models. But sadly, it seems that many don't know this side of her story. While she successfully managed to balance fame with a private life for some time, eventually she decided to step away from the limelight to focus on her family and other interests. For a while, she seemed to have vanished from the public eye, leaving many to wonder where she went and why she disappeared. During her semi-retirement, she did take on some lesser-known projects, such as appearing in films and television shows and becoming a judge on America's Next Top Model. But she kept a low profile and out of the spotlight. In 2015, Naomi made a surprise return to the runway for Chanel's resort wear show in Paris, marking her first time walking the runway in years. She stunned in a tweed suit and sunglasses, looking as elegant and timeless as ever. This unexpected comeback was a surprise to many and served as a reminder of her enduring appeal and influence in the fashion world. Following her surprise appearance at Chanel, Naomi made a rare runway return at RAF Simon's Autumn-Winter 2020 show during Paris Fashion Week. She opened the show in a majestic golden shimmery gown, marking her first time walking for the brand. Her presence on the runway was a surprise to many and a testament to her enduring influence in the fashion industry. So what was the emotional arc that led to her temporarily leaving the catwalk behind? As the title of her autobiography suggests, she led a life both in front of and behind the camera. She excelled at both, but ultimately it was her creative work behind the camera that gave her the most joy. It was also here that she encountered the greatest challenges. She struggled to reconcile her roles as a mother and fashion icon, feeling torn between the demands of her career and her desire to be a good parent. The constant travel and long hours on set made it difficult to be present for her children, something that weighed heavily on her mind. She tried to find a balance, but it was a struggle that never truly went away. The fashion world can be a lonely place, and the constant exposure and scrutiny can be overwhelming. In the documentary The First Monday in May, we see Naomi struggling with the pressure to maintain her image and the toll it takes on her emotional well-being. She admits to feeling isolated and longs for the simplicity of her childhood in Scotland. The bustle of the fashion world was a far cry from the peace and tranquility she found in nature. As she said in her autobiography, she craved the anonymity that allowed her to be simply Naomi, instead of supermodel Naomi Campbell. Despite the challenges, she persevered and continued to make a significant impact in the fashion industry. After taking a break from the spotlight, she seems to have found happiness in a quieter life in Scotland, focusing on her creative projects and enjoying the peace and solitude of her rural surroundings. She's found a balance between her love of fashion and her desire for a more simple life. So what can we say about Naomi Campbell? That she's one of the most successful models of her generation. She broke barriers and paved the way for diversity and inclusion in the fashion world. Her influence is undeniable, and her impact will continue to be felt for years to come. Thank you for watching.